Next, I have the real pleasure to introduce a very good friend, a longtime friend, and a veteran privacy professional, Keith Enright. Keith is privacy counsel for Google, based in California, and he has been on the front lines, really the front lines of some of the major privacy issues of our day. He has a long and deep career which goes back through the limited companies and consulting in the field of privacy, and I know that he is going to offer, I think, a rare and unique perspective for all of you from one of the top global brands working in the very center of this information digital economy that we find ourselves in. So please join me in welcoming Keith Enright to the stage.
Can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. I will apologize in advance for working from my laptop here. Take it as a sign of affection and respect that I want to protect you from the hilarity that my jet lag would otherwise subject you to if I try to just speak from memory. As Trevor said, my name is Keith Enright. I am the legal director for privacy at Google. In that capacity, I lead a team of lawyers around the world in trying to help navigate this incredibly complex and increasingly challenging myriad of requirements that we're facing globally. I'm going to speak to you today at a slightly higher level than most of what you've heard over the course of the last couple of days. And I'm going to try to share a few insights based upon Google's work in the areas of privacy and data protection. I'd first like to thank IAPP for the chance to speak to you all today. And I'd like to thank all of you individually for giving me the chance to talk to you and about some of the lessons that Google has learned as a result of our experiences in the areas of privacy and data protection over the course of the last decade. Now, when Trevor introduced CAM, he observed that we are all part of a global conversation about privacy right now. And while I certainly agree that that's true, I'm going to try to take the conversation and make it a little bit more local here. I want to talk a bit more about the important position that your region, your countries, and your companies have in that global conversation right now from the perspective of a large concerned actor like Google. I really do think there's a tremendous opportunity before you, and I want to talk about that opportunity and what it looks like from our perspective. So I joined Google about 4 years ago, and when I did, I had the privilege of visiting several of our local offices in this region. It was one of the first things I did when I joined Google. I spoke with our staff in Tokyo, Taipei, Shanghai, and Beijing. And I learned a lot during that visit. As someone who had previously served as the Chief Privacy Officer for some large domestic United States corporations, I had some pretty firm fixed ideas about what privacy was all about and how people thought about it. And I learned that my ideas were not global. In fact, I came away from that first Asia trip with a really strong impression about the fact that Asian perceptions and cultural traditions in privacy were in some deep and fundamental ways distinct from those in which I was most familiar from my own experience. What that did for me in my role at Google was really establish a commitment that me and my team would always remain closely engaged with our Asian colleagues to ensure that the evolution of Google's privacy program would remain sensitive to and informed by the perspectives from these important markets. So as my latest endeavor in furtherance of that effort, the past week or so, I've actually been traveling to a few different countries in the region. I've had the privilege of having my colleague, Dr. Lawrence Yu, with me. Lawrence is the Director of Privacy for Product and Engineering for Google, and collaboratively, we drive privacy strategy for Google in addition to just pure legal compliance. Now, as all of you certainly understand, and as you've been hearing here at the IAPP for the last couple of days, there's a tremendous amount of interest around the world right now in privacy developments here in the Asian Pacific region. As Lawrence and I were meeting with regulators and policymakers around the region to discuss our perspectives on privacy, we also learned a good deal about regulators' views on legal trends and different things that they see developing in the region. So I'm going to take a few minutes today and talk about some of the things that I think we learned and observed over the course of those meetings. I'm then going to take it back and tie it to some broad themes and suggestions about what we think this might mean for all of us with a professional interest in privacy and what it means for the future of technology and the future of innovation. Now, perhaps the most important theme that's been reinforced for me over the course of the past week is that the Asian Pacific region is uniquely positioned to assume a global leadership position with respect to creating an environment here that's conducive to really unlocking, as Cam was suggesting, the economic, social, and public benefits that can be realized from data and data-driven technologies. And at least as important as that, you all, here in this part of the world, can demonstrate that you can do that, and that doing so is not inconsistent with a strong and enduring commitment to protecting user privacy. And that last point is something I really want to focus on in our talk today. Google is certainly committed to advancing that important work. We want to provide innovative, useful, and privacy-protective products and technologies. We want those to improve the lives of our users all over the world. And we want to create tremendous economic opportunities resulting from the flexible use of information and data-driven innovation. Now, privacy is, of course, essential to the long-term success of that mission. And Asia, specifically, is uniquely positioned to take a leadership position now, at this point in history, in this next stage of technological and legal evolution, due to the flexible and adaptable environment that you have established and that you continue to cultivate here to foster innovation. From the APEC ministerial meetings, where work on cross-border privacy rules has shown tremendous promise, as Ken was describing, in advancing privacy protection across the region and laying the foundation for further harmonization, the interoperability principle that we've been talking about, on cross-border transfer principles that we can all learn about globally. Asia is playing a leading role in ensuring that this global dialogue remains sensitive to the need for careful consideration of the full range of important social and economic issues that are impacted as the world explores how to protect privacy while providing for the free and efficient movement of data across national borders in a way that will allow the unlocking of this tremendous economic value and it will drive the global economies of today and tomorrow. Now I'm going to pause for a minute there and I'm going to elaborate a bit on that point. Data-driven innovation does not just involve big data, in quotes, in the way that many people are describing it recently. Small businesses, too, are actively trying to improve data processing and better leverage their own data assets to improve their own productivity and to realize value for their business. Now, even though the term data-driven innovation in most of us evokes some image of vast amounts of commercial data being processed and analyzed to create value for a few large stakeholders, the story is actually a lot more interesting and a lot more promising than that, and much more optimistic. The reality is that small amounts of data can drive innovation in even the smallest companies, even at the most local level. Small businesses are increasingly leveraging data like weather forecasts, traffic patterns in their stores, and which items in their stock are the most popular with their specific customers to drive better business decision making and create more economic opportunity. This sort of value generation by small businesses is critical to economic success in APAC and around the world. For example, more than 95% of businesses in Australia are small businesses, and those businesses contribute more than 30% of Australia's economic output. Those 95% of businesses are increasingly going to be looking to use the benefits of data, large and small, to optimally compete in tomorrow's markets. Now, many small businesses today work in relatively sparse data environments without access to the information and resources required for advanced data analytics. We can call them little data analytics, analyzing small data sets to give small businesses insights into their own customers and into their own business. And these types of insights are going to drive tomorrow's innovation by providing these capabilities that may have traditionally been available to large actors, to small businesses who don't have the assets, who don't have the resources to leverage expensive data acquisition, hardware, software, or infrastructure. All of these capabilities are becoming increasingly available to small businesses, and it's going to drive a tremendous amount of economic opportunity. Now, data-driven innovation also improves governance. And this is again an area where Asian governments have a real and timely opportunity to lead the way. Many of the social and public benefits in this area aren't necessarily easily quantifiable, but their importance is very easily recognized. In healthcare and in education, we can drive better educational and medical outcomes. We can provide for more efficient use of public resources. We can alleviate labor shortages in elder care. All of these issues that right now, just to name a few that are timely and relevant to local Asian interests. Data can also lead to better evidence-based governance. By improving public access to government information, you can increase transparency, you can allow for a more informed public policy debate, and you can increase governmental accountability. Now, the recognition of all of these values internationally can already be seen in things like the Open Government Partnership, which currently includes 62 countries, not only the USA, but also Indonesia, Australia, and New Zealand, to name just a few. So data-driven innovation continues to be a significant potential competitive advantage for Asia. Here, companies have demonstrated a capacity to innovate in this space and a real foresight in leveraging data and data analysis to create value for shareholders. Analysis Mason, an expert research group in London, estimated that data-driven innovation and associated services has already contributed over 7 trillion Japanese yen, over $58 billion to Japan's economy in 2014 alone. This constitutes 3.4% of Japan's gross value. If that weren't compelling, by 2020, that number is set to more than double. In Australia, data-driven innovation added an estimated $67 billion in new value to the Australian economy in 2013. That's just over 4% of the Australian GDP, which, as a point of comparison, is roughly equivalent to the retail sector's contribution in that market. It tells you something about the growing critical aspect of data-driven innovation in local markets here. Now, every sector of the Australian economy is using data to grow, from predicting weather patterns, to optimizing harvesting and agriculture, to improving patient diagnosis and treatment outcomes in the health industry, to enhancing the management of remote infrastructure and mining operations. IAPP companies and governments are taking the lead in data-driven innovation. Australia's governments are already realizing the benefits of open data. The Tasmanian government is developing the world's first intelligent sensor network for deployment across the state's agricultural industry. It integrates real-time information on crops, livestock, water, weather, and farm equipment to help communities make better decisions about harvesting and water caching management. Now, right here in Singapore, we see a particularly great example of government-led data-driven innovation. The data.gov.sg portal offers over 8,600 data sets for public use, including the OneMap service, which offers a one-stop geospatial data platform. All of these assets are now available right here in Singapore to drive domestic data-driven innovation. Singapore's Infocom Development Authority has also embarked on a number of relevant initiatives, such as the Data Innovation Challenge, which connects a community of 500 developers to a range of over 9,000 data sets made available by government agencies, multinationals, and SMEs. So now let's come back to why data-driven innovation is so intimately involved with privacy. In fact, privacy is not just consistent with data-driven innovation, it is absolutely essential to its long-term success. Experience has shown that blanket prohibitions on data collection and transfer only serve to limit and stifle innovation. If you look across the world at the areas where we've seen the most value realized through data-driven innovation, data technology, and relevant companies, you can see that it closely corresponds to regions that created flexibility and opportunity for the free flow of information. They encouraged entrepreneurship and innovation to unlock the value of data assets. Now, on the other hand, examples of some restrictions that impede that kind of value generation include inflexible limits on combination and the repurposing of data, limits on international data transfers, or overtly restrictive or technology-dependent consent requirements. Consent requirements that presume the existence of a screen and a keyboard that don't necessarily map well to mobile devices. And we're going to see these challenges just get harder and harder as we become an increasingly reliant society on mobile computing, and as our interfaces continue to evolve and change, and don't necessarily map well to short-sighted legal restrictions that are require very verbose legal notices and corresponding consent mechanisms. Now, when one looks at the areas where tremendous value has in fact been unlocked through data-driven innovation, it becomes clear that the wisest course is to punish the misuse of data in ways that harm users, rather than trying to anticipate all of the ways that data might be used in the future and create prescriptive sets of rules prohibiting collection. Data-driven innovation will flourish under legal frameworks that focus on protecting privacy by addressing the harms of misuse rather than those predicated on a misguided notion that all of the very benefits of data collection and use can be fully understood today. No one knows this more than Google. If you look at the evolution of our products and services, many of them have been serendipitous. We can do great things for our users today that we couldn't possibly have contemplated at the time when a couple of guys in Palo Alto came up with a better way to index and search the internet. Laws which protect users by focusing on harms rather than predictions will do a better job of protecting users from any adverse consequences of technology. They'll do a better job of protecting user privacy, and they will allow markets to realize the greatest possible economic and societal benefits of innovation. Now, at the regional level, there are a growing number of examples of thought leadership in privacy right here in APAC. As I had mentioned earlier, as Cam has said, and as others have said over the course of the last few days, the cross-border privacy rules system really raises the bar for companies to ensure that their practices around cross-border data transfers comply with the minimum requirements established by the IAPP Privacy Framework. This voluntary, certification-based approach will promote a more consistent set of baseline privacy practices for companies doing business in participating APEC economies. This APEC-driven approach to establishing consistent and predictable international standards that reflects the diversity and economic interests of this region will clearly foster a more innovation-friendly environment than would be the case if APEC countries were instead to opt for the blanket adoption of, say, European rules and regulations that may not similarly be sensitive to and respect and advance local Asian interests. All right, now I'm going to take just a few more minutes to talk about some of Google's views on how to best protect privacy. There are a number of complex considerations that we have to tangle with when we're defining privacy strategy for Google. First, most importantly, we have to build the best, most useful products possible if we're going to compete. Now, of course, while we do that, we need to also comply with all of the various laws around the world that govern our business. Simple enough, right? The challenge is privacy means different things to different people. And laws and regulations often aren't even reflective of what we as a company, as a service provider, are hearing from our users with respect to their expectations about how our products and services are supposed to work. So in fact, we need to reconcile an incredibly diverse set, an increasingly diverse set, and a shifting and changing set of global legal requirements with the imperative that we continue to deliver great products and that our practices either remain consistent with or exceed the expectations of our users, so that we continue to delight them and give them products that make their lives better, and at the same time satisfy all of the legal requirements that are imposed upon us. Now, those user expectations can differ widely based on geography, demographics, culture, and any of a number of other variables. Now, that's a big challenge, and it's one that we tackle ultimately by putting the user in control. We do things like empowering users through simple, meaningful controls to turn their search history off or to turn location history off. We try to consolidate their settings. We try to give them real transparency of the kinds of information that's used to deliver Google services to them. We try to give them as many meaningful controls as we can in the Google dashboard and their account settings, so the users remain in control of their Google experience, and the users are ultimately in control of how their information is used to deliver services to them. You know, if for some reason people choose to leave Google, we actually work very hard to let them take their data with them using a service called Takeout. We know that real privacy requires very, very strong security. We've all heard about the data breaches in the marketplace. We've all seen some sort of notice at some point or other about a major corporation that suffered a hack. And it's a real pain for users, and a lot of companies are struggling with it, and a lot of individuals are struggling with it. So we're doing our best to lead industry in providing strong account protections for our users. A couple of examples. Our anti-hijacking systems have reduced the number of compromised Google accounts by more than 99% just since 2011. Now, it's hard for me to imagine a greater advance that Google could do to protect the privacy of our users than to prevent unauthorized people from getting access to that account information. So we work hard at that. We take a lot of pride in it. We were also one of the first companies to offer the additional protection of multi-factor authentication across our services. And we continue to work hard at improving user awareness as to how to use this technology to make it as simple as possible so that people will start using multi-factor, which makes it significantly harder for their account to be hacked and for their information to be inappropriately accessed. But it's a real challenge. Our safe browsing technology scours the web to identify websites that attempt to steal passwords or that contain malware. We're currently showing about 20 million warnings to users that they're about to encounter potentially dangerous content online every single week. Now, perhaps most surprising to some, and one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that we make that safe browsing information available freely to other companies and to the public. Now, both Apple's Safari and Mozilla's Firefox browsers rely upon Google's safe browsing technology to protect users, to make the internet a safer place. And now, taken together, we protect more than 1.1 billion people around the world by making that information freely available. Okay, just a few closing comments in conclusion. It's clear, and you've all heard over the course of the discussion in the last few days, that perspectives on privacy certainly vary widely around the world. But I think we're also getting a growing sense that there is a shared understanding that there are important societal, cultural, individual privacy interests for us to be thinking about collectively and for us to be committed to protecting them. It's absolutely essential that we all work together, we as privacy professionals, we as responsible corporate actors, in parallel with the regulatory community, the legislative community, to better understand what those values are, where there are competing interests, how we can appropriately protect them, and then for us to work together collaboratively to provide these kinds of services to users and to do it in a way that protects these important privacy interests. Now, IAPP specifically has a very real opportunity, as I've said, to be a thought leader in this space. The discussions here at the IAPP over the last couple of days really just provide a glimpse into a handful of the unique opportunities and challenges that we have in the privacy space, not only in this region, but around the world. Data-driven innovation will be critical for the growth and success of IAPP's economies. And privacy, specifically, provides a very real opportunity for APAC to seize a global competitive advantage for companies and governments located here. And I'm confident we'll seize it. So with that, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. And I hope I'll have the chance to engage with some of you one-on-one after the conference occurs. Thank you.